The most complicated thing you will ever build, you built without watching. Every organ, every bone. The whole project was almost finished before anyone knew it had started. Here is the strange arithmetic. Pregnancy is counted as 40 weeks, 3 trimesters, each roughly 13 weeks long. The clock starts on the first day of the last period, which means for the first 2 weeks, nobody is pregnant yet. The body is simply getting the room ready, thickening the lining, warming the space, quietly preparing for something it doesn't yet know is coming. Around week 2, an ovary releases a single egg. It is still the largest cell in the human body, just large enough, if conditions are exactly right, to be seen by the naked eye. One cell, carrying half the instructions. Near the end of that same week, in the narrow passage of a fallopian tube, something small enough to fit inside a grain of salt changes everything. A sperm cell meets that egg, and 2 half sets of instructions become one complete set. Before anyone suspects, before any test, before any sign, eye color is settled, likely height, hair texture. Hundreds of traits written in a moment, in a space you could lose in the crease of your palm. Week 3. The fertilized egg divides, then divides again. It becomes a hollow ball of cells drifting slowly down towards the uterus. Somewhere in that drift, it makes its first real decision, not what to build, but who builds it. The cells on the inside will become the baby. The cells on the outside become the shelter, the tissues, the supply line. Before a single organ exists, the crew is hired. And in this same narrow window, if that inner group splits cleanly in 2, identical twins begin. Week 4. The ball of cells reaches the uterus and hatches, shedding its outer layer, and then it burrows. Implantation sounds gentle. It isn't. It's an excavation, a small, controlled invasion into the thickened lining, anchoring in. This is the moment the hormone a pregnancy test looks for begins to rise. The line on a stick 2 weeks later is the echo of this burrowing, this taking root. So in 4 weeks, working in total silence, the foundation has been laid. Half the instructions of 2 people have become one complete set. A crew has been divided. A home has been found and entered. The outside world has no idea. Now the build accelerates, and if this kind of quiet wonder is what you come here for, following means you won't miss what's next. Because the embryonic period is unlike anything else in a human life. Weeks 5 through 10. The busiest stretch of a human life. The brain and spinal cord begin as a flat sheet of cells, and then that sheet folds itself upward, curling at the edges, zipping closed along a seam running the length of the back. Around week 6, a simple tube, the earliest form of a heart, begins to beat. Roughly 110 times a minute, in something that does not yet have a face. Bones begin to form under skin so thin it is nearly transparent. Muscles sketch themselves in. And all the while, the placenta and the umbilical cord are being built on site by the outer crew hired back in week 3. Oxygen coming in, waste going out, a supply line assembled from nothing. Somewhere in the middle of this, there is a handover almost nobody talks about. The hormones holding the pregnancy together come at first from a small temporary structure left behind on the ovary after the egg was released. It was never meant to last. So, as the placenta comes online, the controls are passed across, from a temporary stand-in to a permanent system. A body hands the controls to an organ it has only just finished building. By the end of week 10, the word changes. Embryo becomes fetus. Everything a human body has been sketched in: heart, spine, brain, limbs, the beginnings of a face. The whole thing is about 1.25 inches head to bottom, the size of a grape. Weeks 11 to 13. The sketch becomes a figure. Arms and legs lengthen. Fingers and toes, which were briefly webbed, separate. Eyelids form, nostrils take shape, a jaw closes. Movement begins. Small shifts, turns, the earliest rehearsals of being alive. Far too small to feel from the outside. By the end of the trimester, about 3 inches, the length of a lime held in a palm. Now step back to the other side of the wall. While all of this is happening invisibly, the body housing it is being quietly rewritten. The first sign is usually an absence, a period that doesn't arrive. Then the hormones move in. Nausea, called morning sickness by someone who clearly never had it, since it turns up at any hour it likes. Breasts that ache. Exhaustion that sleep doesn't touch. Mood that shifts without warning. Foods loved for 30 years suddenly unbearable, the smell alone enough. Why the nausea? One long-standing idea is that it's protective, a heightened sensitivity to anything risky, keeping potentially harmful food away during the most delicate stretch of the build. It's a compelling idea. It is also a hypothesis, not settled fact. What is true is that for most people it eases as the trimester closes. The body finds its footing. The body is not sick. It is occupied, running a project of staggering complexity while trying to carry on with everything else. One more thing worth saying clearly. Some people have almost every symptom intensely. Some have almost none. Neither tells you anything about how the pregnancy is going. Symptoms are not a scorecard. And this. Early loss is far more common than the silence around it suggests. Most of it traces back to instructions that didn't copy correctly in that very first instant, in a process no one was steering, in a space no one could reach. It is almost never caused by anything someone did, or lifted, or ate, or felt, or thought. If something worries you, that worry belongs with a midwife or doctor who can actually look, not a search bar at 2 in the morning. So the first trimester ends quietly. 13 weeks, in which a heart learned to beat, a spine folded itself closed, a face arrived, and a supply line was built from scratch. And almost none of it was visible from the outside. Not one of us remembers the most extraordinary work our body ever did. Every person you pass today was assembled this way, in the dark, at that speed, from one cell. The crew was hired before the build began. The supply line came online before there was anything to supply. And by the time anyone knew, the hardest part was already done. You included. If this changed how you see the person next to you, send it to someone who's expecting, or someone who simply never knew.